Good morning, and welcome to class number 32. We're almost to the end for our Diversity in American Politics class. I only have a fairly short video I would like to do for this class this morning, short by my standards anyway. And I apologize if some of this feels a little more stilted than normal, but I have some key points I want to be sure I get across, and so I'm going to read a text that I presented. So here we go. At first glance, Cramer's book about resentment and rural consciousness may have seemed like an unusual class for a text on diversity. This is all about white Wisconsin voters. It seems narrow geographically, and let's face it, we don't usually think white when we think diversity. Now that you've read the book, and I hope you have, you may have a better sense of why I chose it. For me, democracy is about diversity of all shapes and sizes. The politics of democracy at its core works best when we find ways to work across the differences of opinion that inevitably is created by this diversity. Throughout this semester, we've seen how immigration status creates different political views and political responses. We've also touched on questions of race and the ways in which differences in views of citizens, as well as the different responses of government, shape our understanding of and our reaction to politics. I would note for a moment here that the same is also true of so many other categories that differentiate us, categories like sex, sexuality, and religion, just to name a few. For me, one of the frustrations of this course has always been that I can only cover so much in one semester. But back to what we do have time for. In Cramer's book, we inevitably have some discussion of racial identities, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But we also have a different kind of identity, that of rural, mostly white America. As she points out, while many of our political differences are categorized as partisan differences, Americans of all stripes understand politics on a deeper level, one that partisanship doesn't fully capture. Rural consciousness is an example of this. More broadly, she sees the importance of place in understanding our political views. There is likely to be an urban consciousness as well as a suburban one. Perhaps we need to think more in these categories to begin to understand each other. And to speak in Yoda terms, in my humble view, understand we must, if we are to resolve the political differences short of violence. For that is what politics provides, an avenue through which reasonable people can work out their differences and find ways to live together peacefully in one political body. The other point that Cramer raises at the end of her book is that a politics of resentment, one that she sees in rural Wisconsin, is hard to crack. Once Americans view others through this lens and start placing blame and being blamed by others, discussion ends. Even Wisconsin nice has its limits. I want you to think about all of this as you complete the assigned assignments for today's asynchronous class. You have until next Wednesday at 2 o'clock to complete these tasks, and they will be listed in an email that I will send to you momentarily, but I think it might be helpful if I explain to you what I'm thinking. First, I will want you to watch this video, listed under class videos, class number 32. Secondly, and doing things in this order, I want you to listen to a Wisconsin Public Radio program that I have posted under our PowerPoints and class materials. It's about 22 minutes long, and it's from a Wisconsin Public Radio program entitled Central Time. There, the folks who run the program interview a man by the name of Mike McCabe, who's written a book that is called Blue Jeans in High Places, in which he talks about re-energizing democracy in America. And what I find particularly interesting about this audio clip is that he discusses rural voters in Wisconsin during the 2016 election of Donald Trump. It takes the Cramer thesis forward a few years, and you will hear echoes of her thesis throughout what he has to say. After you've watched my video and listened to the McCabe audio tape, I want you to think for a moment, and just think, about the claims that both McCabe and Cramer have made that the urban-rural divide, as they see it, is not just about race for rural voters, or at least it doesn't represent a racist reaction as we typically think of this. Just think about this reaction for a moment, and I'll ask you to write on it the discussion board, but not until you've done one more thing. Step number 4 is to read read the articles, found at least 2 of the links that I have posted on the discussion board. There is a document under class number 32, under the PowerPoint slides and class information. That is a Word document that lists a variety of different links that looks at the sociodemographic characteristics of the Clinton and Trump voters in 2016. I want you to read those and think about those. And then, last but not least, I'll post 2 discussion questions on the discussion board, and I will ask that you answer one or both if you choose. You don't have to answer every element of the question, but get to the general intent of the question and what the question makes you think. I will also ask that you not create your own forums in responding, but that whoever goes first, that everybody else will respond in kind to that train of postings. It doesn't mean you have to get engaged with the specific points that others raise, but it does mean that you will have to read what others have said about this issue before you put your thoughts forward. The 2 questions are, number 1, what differentiated Trump and Clinton voters in 2016? On what do you base your view? Does anything Cramer or McKay present help to explain this difference? What might it mean for the 2020 election? That's the first question. The second is as follows. Imagine a conversation between one of Cramer's groups, those groups of folks who each know each other and meet regularly, and either representatives of state unions or a group of Black Milwaukee residents who also know each other well and meet regularly. Assuming folks could be civil but say what they want, what kinds of things do you think would be said in these conversations? Those questions will also then be the source of our preliminary conversation next Friday when we meet synchronously for our next class session. Thanks for your time. See you next week.